Good evening. I'm Kelly Wright. Thanks for joining me as we spend the next hour together. I do sincerely hope that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family because you matter. Coming up tonight, we're going to be hearing from Jerron Smith. He's a special assistant to the President of the United States. He'll join us from the White House to discuss the White House initiative on Black America. And then we'll hear from Timothy Allen Simon, who is the chairman of the board of directors of the California Black Chamber of Commerce, to comment on what Jerron Smith will tell us in tonight's program. And then to keep you positive and motivated and encouraged, we'll hear from Erica Lynn, a dynamic young woman who has accomplished much against great odds. She'll talk to us about how to change pain into power. But first, some opening observations. Your vote matters. I've stated it before and I can't stress it enough. With a week away from the election of the next president of the United States, it's important for Black Americans to understand just how pivotal their vote is. Now, we're not monolithic. Some of us vote to the right, some of us vote to the left. But whatever you do, make sure you exercise your right to vote. Don't give up now, because so many people have laid down their lives in order for you to have the opportunity and the right to vote, and vote as if your life depended on it. That's how pivotal and historical this election is, especially in the midst of a pandemic. And those are my opening observations. So welcome to the program. Joining me now is my first guest, Jerron Smith. He is an American political advisor. As a matter of fact, he is the assistant to the President of the United States on domestic policy. He's been serving that role since 2019. Smith has also previously served as Director of Urban Affairs and Revitalization from the beginning of the Trump administration in January 2017. So it's good that he can join us today to talk about the president's initiatives on Black America. Jerron, good to have you today. How are things in this last week before the election?
Oh yeah, it's been a fun ride. So very busy the last couple of weeks.
Indeed, it has been very busy. Look, you've been there with the Trump administration since its inception. What do you say about the initiatives from the White House as it pertains to improving the Black American community?
Well, I'll tell you this: it's historic. It's historic only because in the modern era we haven't had a president really focus on initiatives that only impacted our community. And so if you look at the economy that the Trump administration set up, we had the lowest poverty rates, the lowest unemployment rates. We had more Black men and women, young Black men and women joining the workforce than ever before. And you start seeing us close that racial wealth gap. But you also saw a historic investment in HBCUs, permanency of funding. You also saw the rolling back of the '94 crime bill, which impacted so many Black households and allowed for 14,000 individuals to return home. And then lastly, targeted investments through opportunity zones, which covers 8,700 different low-income census tracts across the country. 34% of those census tracts are African-American, and that's created over 200,000 jobs in those communities. And so these are real efforts and real progress for the Black community.
And of course, there's a lot of heavy voter turnout right now. If the president should win re-election, will he continue these programs, and will he do more for the much touted platinum plan that he's introduced as well?
Sure. Well, there's certainly more work to do. We set out on helping to revitalize communities through the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council, and we knew that it would take more than 4 years to help close some of those disparities. And COVID, of course, shined a spotlight on some of those historic disparities, specifically on access to capital and minority health. And so, in the second term, we will want to invest in a minority consortium of HBCUs that have expertise on health cares and diseases that affect the African American community, and put $500 billion of new capital into the system focused on African American entrepreneurs. And we do that by partnering with minority owned banks, as well as CDFIs, and bigger banks. And I think with those two targeted pieces, along with the work we've done before, we can really see some real progress in the communities.
Many people, Jerron, are looking for progress in the community as it relates to Congress and the White House getting a new stimulus package together and implement it and distribute it so that Black American business owners and entrepreneurs can actually get some of those important dollars to stimulate their businesses and keep their businesses afloat because disproportionately they have been adversely impacted by coronavirus in terms of health and economic wealth.
Sure. And since we've needed this fourth stimulus, we've negotiated a real down payment on that access to capital piece. We realized from the two iterations of PPP that African American businesses need more time. And they also need more technical assistance. And so we've negotiated that in a package very early on. It's unfortunate that Nancy Pelosi has blocked those efforts. Even members of our own caucus have been in support of what the Republicans have presented. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to get that done. But the president, even up until now, we're continuing to push forward to see if we can get something done because we realize that this is not about politics. This is about people, and we need to do the right thing.
What are your concerns about the racial divide that's in this country, particularly since the death of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and unfortunately the list keeps going on and on. Black Lives Matter in the streets to peacefully protest and then being interrupted and dissected and disrupted by Antifa, as well as Proud Boys and other groups that have come in from extremes to disrupt the peaceful flow of protesting.
Sure. I think it's unfortunate. A lot of these protests that happen at night ends up with violence and looting and shooting, and it's not the right way to get justice. We got the best playbook in the world from leaders like Martin Luther King and the nonviolence movement of the 60s. And if we take plays from that playbook, we can see justice rain down from those type of efforts. And so what we need is a lot of local leadership, and local leadership on working with the federal leadership can help contain the violence and focus on peaceful protests. And so that's what we've set out to do. The president's always had an open arm with helping local leaders deal with those type of conflicts. And we stand ready to be as helpful as possible.
Ron, you and I know each other pretty well, and I respect all that you're doing. And of course, Black Americans are not monolithic. They're Republican, they're Democrat, they're liberal, they're conservative, they're independent, and many are undecided. What do you say to the undecided voters who are out there trying to make their decisions in this last week about some of the comments that the president has made with regard to race, and many people saying he has not healed the divide? While he has programs, he has not healed the divide because he has not, in their opinion, denounced white supremacy.
Sure. Well, the president has definitely denounced white supremacy. As unfortunate that the media doesn't always cover all the comments that the president makes. But if you can quickly Google and see the many times that he's denounced it, the real thing is this. At the end of the day, both sides need to put politics aside and focus on empowering the community. And when you're trying to make a decision on which person to support the person that actually has a track record and results. One side may have 47 years of experience, and what have you seen out of those 47 years? President Trump has only been in office for almost 4 years, and look at all the progress we made. This pandemic has hit us. Hit the world, and no one really saw it coming. And so I think we need to realize that the president can't be blamed for what happened through the pandemic, but he can be held accountable on the comeback. And we've seen a quick comeback in a very resilient economy because of his leadership. And if we want to continue to build on those efforts, we need to support someone who's actually going to get the job done. We don't have time to play politics with things like the economy or bringing people together or healing.
A lot of people are out there on the lines right now, actually standing in line for hours to vote. Are you at all concerned about the possibility of voter suppression? The president has talked about the veracity of absentee ballots or ballots being mailed in. What are your concerns about that?
Well, I think we want to make sure the election is fair, and there's no better way to ensure that your vote is counted than showing up to the polls. I think that's the best way to get your vote across the finish line. And so we're always going to support people's ability to exercise their basic American right, and that's to vote.
The fruit of what has happened in terms of this administration reaching out to Black Americans, helping HBCUs, and having opportunity zones. I've spoken to people who are actually operating in those opportunity zones. They're Black Americans who feel that it can help lift up many Black Americans in impoverished communities. From a personal standpoint, as you see yourself working in this important role with the President of the United States, what do you see going forward should this president win re-election?
Sure. Well, we certainly look at opportunities to possibly expand those zones. We only cover 25% of low income census tracts. And so we could look at the possibility of looking at other low income census tracts and expanding that out. But again, it's going to take a lot of local leadership to get the type of reform that helps empower communities. No one knows more about what the community needs than local leaders and local leadership in those communities. Opportunity zones is just a tool to empower them to figure out local solutions to local problems. And so what we're going to do is continue to give those localities the tools they need. But we also need partnerships on the ground in order to create success.
A lot of that can be attributed to the work that you've been doing, along with so many other African Americans who are right there to try to help move things forward. When it comes to police reform, there's a lot of work to be done, as you know, to repair the distrust or the broken trust that's happened between the police and the Black community. What will this administration do to actually repair the breach?
Well, we started doing that. We signed an executive order in June, which created these accreditation and certification process, which allows more police departments to create standards around use of force. Just this Friday, we announced that 4,000 police departments have now adopted those standards on use of force, which includes chokeholds, and also created standards around de-escalation and creating better community and police relations. I think that's a great start, more so than any administration has ever done to modernize our police force. What we want to do is make that statutory. We also want to invest in the co-responder program. Police departments sometimes are overburdened with handling cases with individuals who have mental illness or individuals who are addicted to drugs or individuals who are homeless. And they need help. They need help from civil society. And what we want to do is invest in that. And so we'll work with Congress to create more investment in co-responder programs. But we also will work with Congress to make some of the work that we've done around police standards to make that statutory in the law of the land.
And certainly that is necessary. Just given what happened last night in Philadelphia, where police could have chosen to de-escalate it or wounded an armed man armed with a knife. That's still under investigation. We're still looking at that. I want to get back to the coronavirus real quickly. The president talking about mask or not wearing mask. He says it's good to wear a mask, but there's still the dispute or the mixed messaging about, does he agree with the science? Or is he going on saying it's rounding the curve and we see clear cases of it escalating?
So our administration has been huge supporters of masks. In fact, I was driving to work yesterday and I heard the Surgeon General Adams doing a PSA on the radio about the importance of masks and following some of the mitigation pieces like washing your hands and keeping appropriate social distancing. And so you can see as an administration that we've done all we can to push the appropriate mitigations across the country to try to really protect Americans. And as a result of it, you've seen a decrease in the number of deaths on a daily basis. And we're going to continue to work hard to create a vaccine to help many Americans weather this pandemic.
Jerron Smith, Special Assistant to the President of the United States, joining me on the Kelly Wright Show. I appreciate you, sir. God bless you. Welcome back. Joining me now is Timothy Allen Simon, the owner of TAS Strategies. He's an attorney. He's also the chairman of the board of directors for the California Black Chamber of Commerce. And Timothy, we just finished hearing from Jerron Smith, who of course is a special assistant to President Donald J. Trump. And he was talking about the White House initiatives on helping Black America. And he also discussed the Platinum Plan, which we've discussed on this program before. But you've seen the interview. What do you think about Jerron's answers with regard to my questions about where the White House intends to take or its programs to help Black Americans?
Well, you know, I've had the honor of working with Jerron as chair of the California Black Chamber of Commerce in the advent of the COVID breakout, you know, the COVID pandemic, and the need to get PPP to African-American companies, including the loans and other matters. So I know he's a very bright young man, and he's also very disciplined. And I don't want to make this a cage match between he and I. The problem I have is that I don't know who he was talking about. You know, I mean, it's, you know, the Republicans have a very disciplined messaging about the president, but it's simply not accurate. It's not factual. There are just a lot of, you know, messaging in there that is what they're portraying him to be. But if you follow the president, if you read all the press, if you listen to the different interviews, whether it's on Fox or in the case of 60 Minutes, you find out that that's not the same person that Jerron is talking about. So that was really a campaign message. It should have been the president's voice coming on saying, I approve of this message. I mean, he is working to get his boss, the president, reelected. So, you know, the issue is the veracity, the truth. There was Ronald Reagan that said, trust but verify. If we try to verify many of the things that Jerron said, we'll find inaccuracy. And just this weekend, Cory Booker was saying, and Senator Cory Booker, excuse me, in New Jersey, that, you know, the opportunity zones were created under the Obama administration, or just the statutes itself, the drafting of the statutes. Mitch McConnell wouldn't bring it to the floor. Then President Trump comes along and he takes credit for it. The economic achievements that occurred in the African-American community, that began in the Obama administration. This president inherited a recovery. And yes, I do agree that he stimulated it, but it wasn't like the guy before him who took an economy out of the worst recession since the Great Depression. So the messaging is very partisan, it's not fair, and it's not accurate. And as much as I admire Jerron, I think he would do himself a better service by simply telling the truth. President Trump is not perfect. He has his flaws. I'm not supporting him. I've already voted for Joe Biden and my dear friend Kamala Harris. But we're not doing ourselves a favor as a race when we can't openly discuss both the good and the bad. We need to be independent in our thinking and be focused and disciplined on advancing the race more than the candidate.
What did you think about the president saying he's the greatest president for Black America since Abraham Lincoln?
Well, I've said this on this program before. I find it to be an insult that he would equate himself with the president that signed the Emancipation Proclamation. I don't think you can draw a comparison there. But simultaneously, in the tradition of truth, President Lincoln said that if he could have saved the Union with slavery, he would have. He also proposed having the emancipated, formerly enslaved, return to Africa. So he was a flawed man also. And that's why we have to look at history from an African-American perspective. But for this president to claim that he's done more for African-Americans than any other president, one, I don't even like that terminology. You know, we have many policies and issues that are outside the narrow scope of race. But be that as it may, it's not true. It's not accurate. I would also say that this president and Jerron, they seem to measure everything in terms of the stock market and the job figures. And there is more to living free in America than the stock market and the job figures.
And as you look at the possibility of the president being reelected, what kind of pressure can be brought on the president to and the administration to be more transparent within the Black community as well as with America?
Well, I think based on what we've observed, there has not been transparency. There has not been the production of tax returns. There has not been a recognition of the fact that the Russian government interfered in our election. There hasn't been an acknowledgement of the fact that they have basically reversed the efforts of the Justice Department to truly enact police reform. So, you have to start with the truth. And that has to be a commitment that's made by the president, by the administration, by the president's supporters. It can't be your truth. It has to be the truth. But I could say the same thing about certain Democratic policies as well. So I think as African Americans, I clearly feel that the Biden-Harris ticket is the better choice. I think not only recent history, but as we speak today is evidence of that. And Jerron is going to do his job, and he has to do his job. The opposing team has some really good athletes, but at the end of the day, you want to defeat them. And I think Jerron is exceptional in his own way, but his messaging is clearly flawed.
I'm talking to attorney Timothy Allen Simon, who is also the chairman of the California Black Chamber of Commerce and a former member of the Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger team as a public utilities commissioner. We're talking about all things as it relates to the politics and, of course, the president's initiative on helping Black Americans. We'll be back with more after this. Welcome back to the program. So Timothy Allen Simon, who's part of the West Coast Connection that appears in this program on a weekly basis, is joining me, and he's talking about the previous interview that we aired with Jerron Smith, who is a special assistant to the President of the United States. And of course, this White House came out with an initiative to help Black America. Jerron is part of that, as well as other members of the team within the White House. And like we've seen the mixed messaging with coronavirus. We've seen mixed messaging on the president's agenda to work with Black Americans. Now, on the Republican side, there are many Black Americans who tout his efforts to help HBCUs, to create opportunity zones. But to your point, those were programs that the previous president, Barack Obama, was also initiating, but didn't have the support from the Republicans to actually put it through. So where are we here? Because we're 7 days away from the election day, and Blacks are not monolithic, as I've pointed out on this program so many times before. They're Republican, they're Democrat, they're independent. Where do you see things between now and election day and beyond?
Well, I think we're in a cage match. I believe the Democrats have to continue to campaign like they're losing, even though the poll numbers has given Vice President Biden a comfortable lead in certain states. As President Trump said, he won the last election in the last week. And we don't know what kind of rabbit he's going to pull out of the hat to try to, maintain a competitive advantage in the swing states. He put in his Supreme Court nominee that was confirmed that could actually be reviewing the results of the election, particularly since he is already claiming that the election is fraudulent or rigged. So I think Democrats just have to go all out. They just have to, as we say in basketball parlance, go hard in the paint, because this is going to be a fight to the very end. And to Vice President Biden's credit, he is saying that. He is saying, as I think to quote him, that it's not over until the final bell rings. So I think he understands that in this next week, that he and the vice president nominee, that being Senator Kamala Harris, and all of his surrogates are going to have to really go hard in order to ensure that we can have a peaceful transition of government.
Timothy, in your opinion, what's on the ballot this year besides Donald Trump and Joe Biden?
Well, one, we have the down ballot races. For example, Jamie Harrison's race against Lindsey Graham and other key Senate and congressional seats around the country. I think it's really important. You know, I hear people say that this is the most important election of our lifetime. I believe as African Americans, every election is the most important election of our lifetime because we still fight for the right to vote. We're still fighting against voter suppression. We're still fighting against conservative Supreme Court judges who are rolling back the ability to have equal and fair access to the ballot. So it's not just about removing President Trump from office. It's really about creating a culture, a political culture that balances what economic commitments to improve our society, and clearly a continuous vote, including the next midterm elections. I don't think we let up. You know, professional athletes today really don't have any time off. They finish the season and they're working with their personal trainers. We have to be the same way. We have to already start preparing for 2022 to ensure that we can begin to, for the first time in my lifetime, begin to make what I believe is a meaningful change in the conditions of our people in the communities that we live.
Well said. Going back to our day, and as we were growing up, it was James Brown who said, "I don't want nobody to give me
Right.
nothing. Open up the door, I'll get it
Get it
myself."
That's right.
And then he also said, "You got to get an education.
Or we
Without
might as
it,
well be dead."
might as well be dead."
That's right.
Timothy Allen Simon. We're missing our compatriot in all this West Coast connection, Mark Harris. He'll join us again. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more about what's happening in these coming days. We're down to the wire now, and the
We're in the
candidates
red
are
zone.
barnstorming.
Yeah.
We're seeing Donald Trump barnstorm America, and Joe Biden's doing the same thing. So, Timothy, always appreciate your insights and your perspective.
I appreciate you, Kelly. And as always, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be on the show.
Thank you, brother. Much love to you.
You as
We're
well.
back in a moment after this. So anytime we're going through a lot of negative situations, and indeed we are in the midst of this pandemic, it's always refreshing to get some inspiration and some positivity in the mix. So joining me now to do just that is Erica Lynn, and she is here to speak to us about changing our perceptions of life, that even though we go through negative situations, there is still something we can do to accentuate the positive in our lives. Erica, thanks for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me on your show. And you are absolutely correct. We all go through negative things. I just call that life. Life just somehow knocks you upside your head and you feel like, I don't want to get back up. But in the event that things happen to you, it is imperative that you get back up. And if you don't know how, then you learn the tools that you need in order to help you get back up. Because sometimes people feel like they can't share it with anyone else or they're at it alone. But reality is everybody goes through something. It's just how they get over it, what they use, what tools they use, what people that they surround themselves in order to help them get back up and stand on their own 2 feet in order to move forward. So it is imperative for people to move forward and don't stay stagnant in that place, but instead take the steps beyond yourself into moving forward.
Let's unpack that a bit. You said quite a bit in that, Erica Lynn. You talked about don't stay stagnant. And that's easy to do in this coronavirus pandemic, which has exacerbated a lot of people in terms of their economy, in terms of their health, and has even induced some fear. So how do you get out of that stagnation of uncertainty and the fear factor?
Well, given the fact that this pandemic was something that I don't think any of us had anticipated, And it was so easy because we lived in this fear, like what is going to happen tomorrow? It was almost as if the world was coming to an end. And when you watch all of the media that was surrounded 24 hours, it began to play into your psyche to where you kind of was almost going a little cuckoo in a sense from just watching just the lives lost and the sadness. And so you like, well, I just kind of really feel like giving it in the towel. Like, what do I have to live for if this is all that I have to see during this pandemic? But when you actually take a moment to meditate and you take a moment to ground your 2 feet, and so you think inwardly, like, if the world does not end tomorrow, what legacy am I going to leave? What are people going to know me by? And those things kind of help move you forward, and you begin to kind of taking steps to moving forward. So for example, and I don't know if you fell victim to this, but everybody started eating during the pandemic, like eating uncontrollably, like the cookies, the cakes. You're like, well, if I'm going to leave her, I might as well leave her happy. But then when you look down, you can't fit your pants. When the weather warmed up enough, when you can go outside, you couldn't fit your clothes. You're like, well, dang, well, what am I supposed to do? So one of the things that I personally did, I just got up and I started exercising in the living room every day. And then my mom, she tricked me. She challenged me. She said, well, can you do that live? So I did it live. And she said, well, can you just do it every day for the pandemic? I challenge you to do it for the pandemic. Well, the pandemic was only supposed to be 15 days, Kelly, right? So I I end up working out every day for 60 days for the pandemic. But what I realized is I helped a lot of people that was dealing with eating the cookies and the cakes because they couldn't go outside, they couldn't do nothing. So I began a movement within what I could do to show you to put the cookies down and let's dance away the pounds. And so those are little things that you could do to help you to not be stuck, to move you forward, and so that's an example of something that people can do.
Look, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk to Erica Lynn about what she's gone through personally to help us all professionally. Back with more after this. Welcome back to the program. So I've been talking about what it takes to be positive in the midst of these negative situations that we're confronted with on a daily basis because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Erica Lynn has stopped by to weigh in on these matters. Erica Lynn Speaks. Make sure you check her out online, ericalynnspeaks.com. And Erica, for all that you've been through personally, you have shown that there's power that can come from pain, and promise that can come from it, and hope over despair, and faith over fear. Tell me about the things that you've gone through in order to be able to stand or sit where you are today and look at the world and say, no matter what you're going through, no matter how bad it gets, you can overcome this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For me, my fears and my traumas came from me as a little girl. I just remember coming home from school when my dad had moved out of the house. And I was that devastated me. That caused what I term the daddy syndrome. You're always looking for love in all the wrong places. You're looking for that love that your father is supposed to give you. When he takes you on your first date, pulls the chair out for you and teaches you how a man is supposed to treat you, tell you beautiful, so that when the first knuckleheads say, oh, you're gorgeous, you don't fall for anything because you know your self-worth and your value. Yeah. And so from that experience, I was just always searching for something or someone to give me that love that I was looking for. So I would gravitate to a lot of people, hoping that they would be that short term or borrowed flower. Sorry, borrowed. I can't even get it out. There's an interim father figure. And we had a neighbor that lived down the street from us. And this neighbor, my mom would say, well, go and ask him to take you to the store for me. Go and, do so and so. So one particular day, he took me to the grocery store. And I remember trying to get in the back seat of the car. And he says, well, no, ride in the front seat with me. I was like, no, I don't want to. So anyway, I got in the front seat and I remember sitting closest to the door as I could. And he says, well, why are you sitting so far? I said, because I want to look at the view. Well, to make a long story short, I remember him grabbing me gently, not rough, and pulling me close to him. And he began touching me and doing things that was inappropriate to a 13-year-old girl. Well, that totally sent me into this mental rat race where I just started running through life. I ran from everything. I didn't tell my mom when we got home because I didn't want my mom to end up, in prison from doing something to him. And so that was like my form of protecting her. But all through life, I started running. I started partying and hanging out, and I became a stripper at 17. I had my first child at 17, got married at 19, ended up in a 10-year abusive marriage with my husband. But when things began to change, I said, I have to take a stand for myself. I gotta fight for my kids. I gotta fight for my life. And I got out of that marriage and started moving forward. Well, I went back to college, Kelly, when I was 35 years old. And I said, finally, I'm off of welfare. I'm going to make a lot of money. My life is going to be great. I'm going to have that dream job, and everything in my life is finally going to be worth the pain that I went through. Well, do you know, when I graduated from college and I landed that dream job, I totally hit rock bottom after that. I said, wow, all that I went through, all that I fought for, why am I hitting rock bottom? I cried every day for a year while I was at work. I would go to work and put my back to my coworkers in my cubicle. And from 8 in the morning to 11 at night, 11 in the afternoon, 11 in the morning, I would cry. And I had no idea what was happening. But in hindsight, the same people who not per se hurt me, God chose to use me and to help heal me. I had to go through that healing process. My father came back in my life. We spent the last 3 years of his life loving on each other. He started instilling those things in me that I was always looking for, because at that time I was going through a second divorce, and I was afraid to sign the divorce papers. And when he got through, empowering me, I was happy to sign those divorce. Like, yes, I don't have to take this. And then another friend came into my life, and he began teaching me that all men are not bad. All men does not mean to hurt you. And then so I started experiencing love from a good place. And then let's not forget Pastor Leon McDonald from the Winter Circle Church. He started praying with me and loving me from a place of God. So this was a gentleman that I did not know, but he started showing me love that was coming from God, from a God's love. And I said, well, wow, this is amazing to really be able to have relationships with men that does not mean harm to me. And so just because I had those first experiences doesn't mean that I have to pour out my anger towards all men in the world, because all men are not bad. And so I believe that those experiences that I went through was because I needed to show other women that, yes, we go through things, but if you do the work, if you go through the healing process, you can get over it, and you don't have to make somebody else in your present pay for what happened to you in your past. And so that was the purpose of never give up, never quit. Because if you keep working at something, I know it's going to be rough. I know it's going to be tough. I know you're going to want to cry. You want to quit in the middle of the process. But if you don't give up, look at the end of the rainbow. Like, it's beautiful. It's all these colors. It's fantastic. I smile all the time now, Kelly.
We're coming back with much more after the break. You've been through a lot, and it's a remarkable story of your faith, of your hope, and your love. And I'm glad that the reunion with your father, your biological father, took place before he passed. And I'm also glad that he helped redeem your impression of men, because there are a lot of good men out here. And good men make mistakes, and mistakes can be made, but good men can come back and redeem themselves. And I think what you say is so important for this current time that we're living in, where people are confronted with so many things, bombarded with the negative news that goes on, bombarded with the pressures from COVID-19, bombarded with the pressures of racial division and political division, and just trying to get through life. And it's good that you could come on and talk about what you've been through life and how now you sit back and you enjoy life and you're actively engaged in living and caring for people. So, Erica Lynn, speak to us and tell us what you do and leave us with a positive note so people can be inspired.
Well, I'm a motivational speaker, a transformational coach. I also have the podcast, Erica Lynn Speaks Podcast, and I am the author of the 7 Techniques of Healing. So what I do is I have one-on-one coaching programs. One of them is called Let Your Light Shine. So if you have that light inside of you and you've been holding it dormant, well, it's time to let it out and let it shine. And I'll work with you in the process that I'm going to help you help yourself go through the steps of shining that light. And then for all of those who say, hey, I'm not ready to work one-on-one, but I do want to work with someone, then you can come into my One Step Beyond You online group coaching program. And in this program, you have phenomenal tools that's available to you. The 7 Techniques of Healing online courses in there. I come in there bi-weekly, and you have access to me live in the online Q&A forum. You have access to the other members so that you get support from other like-minded individuals who can help build you up when you feel like you can't go anymore. And so the whole goal of all of this is, no matter what you go through, whether it's past, present, or things that you foresee in the future, you can always take a moment to breathe and look inwardly and dig deep down inside yourself and find that good things, those values, those things that was placed inside of you, and pull them up and fight for you. Fight for you. Don't give up. Never quit, and never give up. Always take one step beyond yourself.
I appreciate you, Erica, and thank you for motivating us and keeping us inspired. And the bottom line is that each and every one of us must be responsible and accountable for lifting each other up and never give up. Erica Lynn, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be back with my final word after this. And welcome back. I'd like to thank all of the guests who appeared on tonight's program, and I especially want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to watch. I appreciate each and every one of you. My final word is this. Erica Lynn is right. We must never, ever give up. Therefore, keep your hopes alive, keep your dream thriving, and never give up on your faith. Hopefully, we've been righted, ignited, and united to keep spreading knowledge, love, freedom, and peace. Good night.
Just wait. It's coming on. The love train. Just give it time. Give it time. Get on board.
Everyone's invited.
That means you.
We're all united.
And you and you.
On the love train.
Get on board.
All creeds and colors.
Brothers.
All sisters and brothers.
And sisters.
On the love train.
Get on board the love train. Everyone's invited. We're all united on the love train. Get on board. All creeds and colors, my sisters and brothers.